Hi guys, it's Aoife from Words of Clover and I am here to do my weekly wrap up, well, a bi-weekly wrap up because I did not do a wrap up last week. I have 3 books to talk to you about today, and yeah, I've only read 3 books in the last 2 weeks, which is a very small amount for me for people who are normally around here and know how many books I read a week. I'm not sure, I wouldn't say like I'm in a book slump because I don't really get into book slumps, but this is probably like the closest thing to a book slump that I would be in, where I'm just not really reading books particularly fast, and yeah, I'm just slower than normal for some reason. I just don't have as much, I think, enthusiasm to pick the books up for some reason. So the first book I want to talk to you about is Don't Touch My Hair by Emma Dabiri. This is a non-fiction book. Emma Dabiri is an Irish-Nigerian author. This book, she's basically talking about a black person's experience in this world at the moment, and she is kind of talking about it through the history and the importance of hair, and particularly a black person's hair, and most particularly a black woman's hair, and how black women's hairstyles have been controlled, have been fetishized, have been appropriated, and all the different ways that through hair black people have actually been controlled and experienced racism. Even through hair, they show that there is this like pressure of this like European ideal, even when it comes to hairstyles and what is pretty and what isn't pretty, and just how far back that goes. This was just one of the most brilliant books I think I've ever read. It was something that I had been on my radar for a while because Leanne read it, from Leanne Rose. She read it during the Irish Readathon, so I knew a little bit about it, and with everything going on, I was like, okay, well, it's time to pick this book up, and I did, and I feel like I've just learned so much about it. I kind of want to read it again already, and it's definitely one that I'm going to get the physical copy of because it's one that I think I would like to flip through. There are different graphs and things in it and pictures and stuff, and I think a physical copy would be really, really helpful for me, and it's definitely one I will reread again. It is one that I will be buying for people in my life to read because I think it is just so important and so fascinating. Like, there were just some things that I never knew about when it comes to hairstyles, when it comes to African culture, African history, things about how different hairstyles and how they go back into history and how they can be connected to like science and maths and things like that. And it is just so brilliant. It's just one of those books that I took a while to read because I felt like I wanted to read it and take it in, and there were some parts that I even reread a few times, a few different bits and pieces that just really struck me. And it's one that I've talked about with everyone in my life. I've recommended it to everyone, and yeah, it's just an absolutely brilliant book. I just couldn't get over how insightful it was and how well put together it was. And Emma Dabiri is one of these people, as soon as I started reading this, I was just in awe of her intelligence and the way she wrote this book and the way she educated the readers was just brilliant. Yeah, she's just an amazing person, and I will definitely be seeing what other things she writes, whether it's non-fiction or fiction. I think she's a brilliant writer, so I'll definitely be watching out for what she does next. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I just absolutely loved it, and yeah, it's just really eye-opening for me. Really learned a lot about it, and it's definitely one I'll be thinking about for a while. And as I said, I'll be buying my own copy of it, a physical copy. I have it on my Kindle, but I'll be buying a physical copy of it, because it's one that I will definitely be rereading in the future. And I should say that Don't Touch My Hair by Emma Dabiri is coming out this week, I think, or the end of this week, in America, but it has a different name. It's called Twisted, but obviously by Emma Dabiri, but it's just not called Don't Touch My Hair. It's called Twisted in America. So if you are an American reader and you are looking for it, you'll find it under that title rather than Don't Touch My Hair. So the next book I read was Us Against You by Fredrik Backman. This is the second book in the Bear Town trilogy, I believe it's going to be. There is another book on Goodreads listed after this one. The Bear Town is basically set in this really small Swedish town, and it is a town that doesn't really have that much going for it, but they're really into hockey. Like, they are huge into hockey. This is the sport they love. And in Bear Town, basically you're following this team who have this really high hopes of winning this like championship that will mean a lot of good things for the town. And then one of the star players on the team is accused of raping the general manager's daughter, and they're both, I think, about 16 or 17 years old, and obviously this has major effects on the town. And then the town is kind of split, people who kind of take the girl's side and people who don't believe her, or even not that they don't believe her, but take the boy's side because they feel like obviously he is part of the hockey team and the hockey team is like this really big thing, and it really splits the town into two. So for Us Against You, we're kind of following on from the summer after that happens, and we're kind of seeing the effects of that case and what is happening and how everyone is kind of getting on, how people's marriages are doing, how people's friendships are doing, how the town is doing, the future of the hockey team in general, and how, yeah, the whole town is still kind of split into two. There's some really bad blood between people now. And in this one, it's just really, I don't know if I can say that I really enjoy this book, because I love Fredrik Backman's writing. He's one of my favourite writers of all time. He has such a beautiful way of writing, but this one just felt so emotionally manipulating at times, because you knew that something bad was going to happen. You know going into this book that at the end of the book someone is going to be dead, and we just don't know who that is. We know from the very start there's someone is going to die, we just don't know who. And so the whole book, you're kind of, there's some characters who are just really special in this book, and there's some characters who are so vulnerable and so much in danger, not just from other people, but they're in danger from themselves and their own minds and their own thoughts, that you are just so scared the whole book reading this and not knowing what is going to happen. And Fredrik Backman in this particular book, he has a way of writing it that reminded me a little bit of The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak, where he actually lets you know now and again about a particular character's future. So you know that a particular character might actually go on and become a professional hockey player. He gets his dream of becoming a professional hockey player. We know that one character will become like this really famous rock star, and so you kind of know characters who do have a future, but then you don't know other ones. And you know there's one character who does potentially die young, but you don't know if he's obviously the character who will die in this one. You're told little tidbits about these people's lives, and you know kind of what their future is, but you also don't really know, so you're still scared about, you know enough, but you don't know enough to know if your characters are safe, basically. And it's a very heavy book, particularly the start of this book. I think a lot of characters are obviously just dealing with a lot of things, and this book in particular, while the first book really centered around this rape case, this book in particular follows a certain character's sexuality and his struggle in coming out, and the homophobia that he is at risk of receiving if he does come out. And there is a lot of moments in this book around the storyline where there are gay slurs used. There is a lot of homophobia shown on the page, and there is a lot of use of the word, the F word. Yeah, it definitely feels heavier. I think this is one of the heavier books. Where Bear Town was heavy, I almost felt like this one was heavier, and I think this is probably the heaviest book that Fredrik Backman has written, while at the same time he still carries through that humour that I recognise in his writing, that kind of the humour, almost the dark sense of humour, I guess, as well. But yeah, just the way the characters are all connected in this book, the different lines, the way his language is used, and the way his writing can be translated so well. I actually don't know if there is a particular translator for Fredrik Backman's work, but whoever it is does such a good job, because it translates so well into English. I don't know if Fredrik Backman writes in English as well, but if someone is translating it, they're doing a really good job, because I think it just translates really, really well. I think it might actually be a 4.5 out of 5 stars, because I did feel that kind of almost emotional manipulation at times, which in some books can be a really bad thing. There's some books that I've had that feeling where I've hated them. This one, I did really enjoy it, but at the same time, there were parts of the book that I didn't really enjoy. I'm not sure if it was like a really enjoyable reading experience, if you know what I mean. And the last book I read this week was The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I buddy read this with a friend of mine in real life, and that was a really fun thing to do. The last book that we actually buddy read was The Shadow of the Wind, Carlos Ruiz Zafran, which was actually kind of sad, like a weird sad coincidence this week that we were buddy reading this one, and obviously Carlos, he passed away this week. This book follows the life of 13-year-old Theo Decker, and we meet him when he goes to visit a museum with his mom, and basically something really, really bad happens that day when he goes to the museum, and his mom is dead, and he ends up kind of being almost orphaned in a way, and then eventually shipped away to live with his deadbeat dad. The day at the museum, when the terrible thing happened, Theo stole something, and this thing ends up kind of almost not controlling the rest of his life, but has a really, really big influence on the rest of his life and what he does with the rest of his life. He ends up getting drawn into like these really shady things and all sorts. So this book is like hefty. This is like an 800 page, like thin, almost Bible page book. Like there is like a lot of writing on each page, and yeah, we only started buddy reading it on Sunday, and we finished it today. So it took us a week to read, which isn't too long considering, like, as I said, it's an 800-page book. So we both actually found it very easy to read. It flowed really, really well. Once you kind of get into the story, it flows really well, and the story itself goes quite quickly. The way everything kind of comes together in this book, and the way characters are kind of come in and out, and characters that you might meet at the start and they come back in the end, and it's just kind of nice in that kind of way to see characters in Theo's life kind of revolve around him. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. A lot to do in this world about like antiques and paintings and historic pieces of art and stuff like that, and I'm not really into that myself. Like, it's not something that I am interested in. It's not something I really know a lot about, and there were some kind of passages about this where they would be talking about art or talking about antiques in a way that I would kind of glaze over a tiny bit when I was reading it, because it just wasn't particularly interesting for me. But at the same time, I do still think that this is just like a phenomenal book. I think Donna Tartt, this is the first Donna Tartt I've read, and I can see why she is such a renowned writer, because this is like a really well written book. There was that kind of trope in this of Theo being in love with this girl for like almost his entire life and pining over her, but it kind of felt like more like he was in love with the idea of her rather than herself. And I'm just kind of, that was just one of those tropes I'm just like a little bit tired of seeing in books, because we tend to see it a lot, and I feel like we didn't really get to know her. We just kind of got her through Theo's eyes sometimes, and we didn't really get to see their actual relationship and the actual conversations they had. So I didn't really like that, and every time like there was something about her on the page or she showed up, like, she was a nice character, but when Theo would kind of go on about her, I'd be like, oh god, here we go again. Theo is a bisexual character in this as well. He has a relationship with a man, and he also has relationships with women, so that was really nice to see. I didn't know that about this book as well, so that was really nice to see. So I did really enjoy this book. I think I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 stars overall. I'm not sure if it's a 4-star. I did really enjoy it. At the moment it's more of a 3.5, but it's still really, really good, and yeah, I really recommend it. If people want to read it, if they want a hefty book to read, this might be the one for you. Everything I read this week, please let me know what you guys think down below, and I'll see you guys again next time. Bye.